Okay, so the Americans have just won the American Revolution. They are now an independent country. Now what they're going to have to do is figure out what are we going to do with this independence. The first thing we're going to look at today is the state governments. Now remember, before the American Revolution, each colony had a government. So each state pretty much has its own government at this point. A few things change. Some states add separate branches of government to their state government, and some add a Bill of Rights. But one thing that remains common among all of them is that they all have a republic form of government. Now, we need to remember back to the zombie lesson. Republic is where you elect representatives, and those representatives vote on decisions. So, at this point, we know that all the state governments have a republic form of government. Now, the big choices and the big decisions are going to come when we look at a national government. Now, the first thing is that everyone agrees that the national government also needs to be a republic. Now, pretty much after this, there's a lot of disagreeing. The first thing they disagree on is how many people are we going to send to the government to represent each state? Is it going to be one per state? Or are we going to send more to the bigger states and less to the smaller states? So that's one of the first things they disagree on. Also, what in the world are they going to do with that land west of the Appalachian Mountains? Now, they eventually agree on the Articles of Confederation, which we're going to look at. So, the Articles of Confederation, what they do, they give the national government very few and limited powers. Now, this is not surprising at all, because they've just finished the American Revolution, which was fought to gain their independence from a government that they thought was taking too much control. So, it's not surprising that they don't want their national government to be strong. Now, somebody has to have the power, though, and so what they do is they have most powers are left in the state governments. If we look at the chart, we have the states can set and levy taxes, they can enforce laws, and at this point, they're going to be the ones that control the land west of the Appalachian Mountains. The larger states are going to get land claims in this territory that's west. Now, what can the national government do? They can wage war, they can make peace, sign treaties, and issue money. But that's where their power stops. So, what do we need to remember? National government, little power. State governments have most of the power. One other thing is that this government is going to be run by a Confederation Congress, and they're just going to send one person per state to Congress. So the Articles of Confederation is passed by the Continental Congress, and it's sent to be ratified. We need to know what ratification means, or ratifying. It means approving. If you don't know it, make sure you write it down. So, they're sent to the states, and each state is going to decide whether they're going to approve or not approve. At first, 8 states choose to ratify, and some of the smaller states choose not to ratify. Now, the reason for this is because these small states are upset because they don't have the western land claims that the larger states have. Each of the states is suffering from debt from the war, and the smaller states realize that the larger states are going to be able to sell their western land to gain money, and the small states feel like this is a disadvantage. They think it's not fair. Well, eventually, all the large states give up their western land claims, and so the small states decide, all right, we're going to ratify, and the articles are ratified. Now, whenever the states that had the land claims give them up, they give them up to the national government. Now the national government must decide, what are we going to do with these western lands? The first thing they decide is the Land Ordinance of 1785. They're going to stake out 6-mile square plots that will be known as townships. So they're going to stake out these plots in that land west of the Appalachian Mountains. This land is going to become the Northwest Territory. You can see listed below are the different parts of land. We have Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, and parts of Minnesota are all part of this Northwest Territory. Now, the next thing they decide is, how are they going to govern this? That's what the Northwest Ordinance is. How will this land be governed? What they decide is they're going to, when a township gets 5,000 free males, it's going to elect an assembly. When that township grows to 60,000 people, it can apply to be a state. Now, the last thing, and very important thing that we need to know is, in the Northwest Ordinance, slavery is outlawed in those territories. Now, some of you might be saying, well, how come the southern states let this happen? How come the southern states didn't get upset like they do later on? Well, the reason is that right now, the southern states, they don't want this competition from the Northwest Territory, so they're okay with slavery being outlawed there. Okay, on this map, you're going to see the Northwest Territory. It's in light green. Okay, so making the decisions on the Northwest Territory was really the Articles of Confederation's only success. Very quickly, the Americans realized this Articles, it has a lot of issues. The first reason is that after the war, the United States is in serious debt. Well, the problem with that is that the national government can't levy taxes. Remember, we talked about that earlier. The only people that can levy taxes are the state governments. So what the plan was that the state governments are going to levy taxes and they're going to send them to the national government. Well, the state governments are also in debt, so they send very little. So quickly off the bat, there's issues. Now, if you look right here, this is a whole list of weaknesses with the Articles of Confederation. It couldn't enforce laws, it couldn't levy taxes, it couldn't regulate trade, and it also needed 13 states to change the Articles. So 13 states would have to agree on these amendments or any type of change that they wanted to make. Now, we said that the whole country's in debt. The states are in debt. One of those states that's in some serious debt is Massachusetts. Well, what the state does is they raise their taxes, and the people of the state can't pay them. Some of the farmers go into even more debt. They beg for tax relief, but the state government refuses. So Daniel Shea gets a group of people together. Daniel Shea gets a group of people together, 1,500 men, and they're going to lead a rebellion. They march onto a federal arsenal, which is where weapons are stored, but they're quickly defeated by the state militia. Now, the reason that this is so important is this event kind of woke the American leaders up. They've just finished a war. They have no desire to have any more issues, but they see that they've got to do something because they already have people up in arms and rebelling. So what we're going to talk about in our next video is what the leaders decide to do.